Thank you. All right. Good evening. Final Fantasy Worlds Collide fans, welcome to the Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide Kefka Grand Prix Week 2 here on the Worlds Collide channel. I am Current, and I am joined here by my co-com this evening, Imp. How are you doing, Imp?
Doing pretty good, thank you. Very excited to be here for week 2, my first time on the restream for this particular KGP. So very interested in seeing what we have going on tonight.
Oh, absolutely. We have, as you see on screen, Siberian Bull, Mr. Entity, WR Jones, and Javinator, who are going to be on the restream this evening. It is going to be a grand old time. We have 4 very good runners here, so I think it shall be entertaining. We are going to be dropping the gate very shortly. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to a great race tonight. Ince, do you want to chat up the flags a little bit while we drop the gate and get everybody started?
I sure do, and I think this is going to be a really good test of skill. You know, these were 4 runners that were within 7 minutes of each other during the first week. So this is going to be a bit more difficult from what I know of the week 1 flags versus this one. So a few things that stand out to me very, very importantly. The first one is the progress times 3 scaling on enemy levels and like that, which can be kind of difficult if you're fall behind at any point in time. And compounding that is going to be the fact that the party join average level flag is off. So any new character that they get is going to start basically at that base level 3, and that's going to hurt them quite a bit, as we do see the start now, and we are going to have a Cyan and Gao start with Shock on the Cyan.
Oh, yes. I will say I ran my seed of this last night, and it was, like you said, the progress times 3 and the average starting level being turned off was definitely imposing. So we'll be interesting to see how these runners handle it. Looks like Int is going ahead and heading into Narsh, as is likely Jones. Siberian is headed over to the Returner's hideout. So essentially, we've got our good old-fashioned treasure looting strategies up front here, which is not really much of a surprise given.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how much this is going to matter as much as it does in the early game, because they did get some pretty good early on abilities too. So you have Shock on Cyan, which will probably take care of most everything early game. And then you have Steel, which is not great, but Sword Tech on Gao. So you have something that will also scale into late game too. So they've got a pretty good start on the characters. I wouldn't be surprised if you see someone cut their looting short and try and go and tackle some things early on.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too surprised either, simply because you've got because you've got Shock and Sword Tech, like you mentioned, which can do pretty good service early on. I noticed Jones went ahead and went up into the mountains of Narsh to see what was at the Kefka check and didn't find anything satisfying, so he reset.
And another thing on Siberian Bull's end that you might have noticed too in the Returner's hideout is while breakable rods are off in this flag set, super balls still exist. And he's found them, so if they have a bit of a trouble with one of the more difficult bosses early on, that could be a strategy that they go and do. Just buy a few of those and push your way through.
Yeah. I will say, as a relatively newer runner of the game, I have not used Super Balls very much myself. And I will admit the one time I think I threw one out, possibly on the seed that I did last night, I don't remember. It didn't seem to be terribly much, so I might have to experiment a bit more with those myself and practice seeds just to get a better sense of how good they could be.
Well, the thing with Super Balls is they're inherently random, so they're always going to be either really strong or really weak, and there's no real in between. But they can be very useful if you run into, say, Tritalk early on, where you have to have fire damage or defense ignoring damage to blast something like that down.
Right.
So by getting that, they have options past it, but Siberian Bull has just found Ragnaroks for sale, I believe, in South Figaro.
Yeah, they were in South Figaro, and that was music to a lot of people's ears looking in the spoiler chats after the race, after I finished my seed. Meanwhile, Javinator has found a Celis on the Veld. A Celis that I think was, I think had slots as an ability, so not exactly a whole lot to write home about, but still, nice to find her nonetheless.
Yeah, the ability's not great, but again, if you're looking at it in terms of scaling into late game, Celes is one of the best characters to find. She has innate use of some of the best equipment in the game, like Minerva's, and I believe she can innately equip Illumina as well. So that combined with her naturally high stats, including her, I think, second best in the game magic stat, unless I'm misremembering. Really a good thing to find early on, especially again in this seed where you have party members joining at their base levels. You're gonna kind of want to keep those first 4 that you find no matter what.
Right. Yeah, that definitely, that aspect in and of itself is definitely going to affect how the runners go about taking care of various strategies. All right, it looks like Javinator's found those Super Balls too. Pretty much everybody has at this point.
Yeah, I just wonder if everyone's going to find some of the other things that I've noticed on a few of these runner streams. I noticed that Siberian Bull found an Aegis Shield early on as well. So he knows where Ragnarok is, knows where an Aegis Shield is. Again, he goes and gets that Celes with the dried meat on the Veld. He already has equipment that Celes will be incredibly strong with later on.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so it looks like Javinator and Int are in South Figaro proper. Siberian is pillaging the basement, and Jones is heading through Returner's hideout. So kind of crossing each other's paths right now, which is generally pretty natural given that there's so much treasure to be had. But yeah, like you said, I think we'll see some checks as far as using some of those abilities pretty soon.
Yeah, and honestly, for all that I was sort of bigging up this seed ahead of time about the difficulties it could present with the progress scaling like that, I'm kind of starting to see a setup for everyone where I'm not entirely sure anyone's going to have a massively difficult time with it.
Yeah. All right, folks sitting there talking about their strategies in chat. That's one thing that's definitely interesting about these seeds, this Kefka Grand Prix, is especially for folks like us who are doing the restream and what have you. We had to have already done the seed first, so it makes for a little bit of a different commentary style than what you might normally see.
Except for me in this case, as I'm sure not appearing in this tournament, so I haven't run the seed yet myself.
Fair enough. So you get the unvarnished discovery commentary. Oh, wait a minute. How did... Sorry, I saw Siberian pull an experience egg there in South Figaro. I do not remember picking that up, and I'm pretty darn sure I cleaned that place out.
Yeah, it was in that one hidden chest sort of way towards the bottom of it. And that's an easy one that I see people miss quite often when they're working on their looting routes and like that.
Yeah. I might have to, I don't know if I still have the seed, but I might have to go back and see just how I managed to miss that, because I usually hit that route when I'm going through there. That would, especially on a seed like this, where you have average start level turned off, that is a very good find.
And speaking of good finds too, one thing to point out, Javinator did check that Celes cell as well and found Terra in it. So he now has a Terra with two different characters that can equip those Ragnaroks. He has probably the same Aegis shield that Siberian Bull has. I'm sure he'll find other armor. He has a very, very good setup for later.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, I will say one of the things that I kind of regret in the way that I ran this seed was I knew that the rags were there, but I ended up not getting any because for most of the seed, I didn't have enough money to afford them. And one of the things that I do need to get a little bit better in regards to how I play is knowing what to sell so that I can afford some of that better stuff a little bit earlier. That I would suspect would make life a lot easier.
Yeah, the rule of thumb I usually go by is if I don't have throw, sell everything. But just literally everything, every chance I get, and just buy better stuff because the disparity from bad gear to good gear in this game is so high that you want to get rid of everything that's not top tier gear and just hope you can use it to buy top tier gear.
Yeah. And it's in some sense one of the things that I'm still kind of getting used to is, well, I mean, I guess just myself speaking, I'm very much a traditional RPG player, which means I hoard everything. But it's getting a better sense for what is the best stuff. Because when I started playing this randomizer, I had not really played FF6 a whole lot in a number of years. So it's to some degree something of a reacquaintance, I suppose.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It took me a little bit when I got back to this, but I just want to quickly point down to Javinator's end where he just looted the Imperial base. That was probably one of the most stacked Imperial bases I've seen in a long time. There was fixed dice in the furnace. He picked up an ice shield. He picked up a lot of that, like, not top tier, but sort of high up in the second tier equipment, like a force armor and a red cap and like that, which he could either use or sell it, buy those Ragnaroks and get ahead that way too. So he's in incredibly good shape, having gone and done those 2 character checks early on, having had them pay off, and having used that to his advantage to know that he's already in an incredibly good place in terms of equipment.
Right. All right. It looks like I would assume Siberian is trying to get the Stellus encounter on the Veld. Meanwhile, Ent has gone ahead and headed over to Doma Balance and is going to, well, find a guardian guarding the place.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well run into something like this early on. One thing to note is that scale element is on for enemy abilities in this seed, so nothing that he finds is gonna hurt all that badly. Does manage to steal the force armor from the Guardian, which is pretty good. I'll imagine at some point in time you'll sell that for a big chunk of a Ragnarok later on.
Yeah, fair. But yeah, I find it interesting, I guess just because of my experience with vanilla FF6, or at least what I could remember of vanilla FF6. I always remembered or thought of Guardian as being something scary, but you encounter him early, he's not all that hard, as Mr. Entity has just shown by just taking him off the face of the planet.
Yep. Well, he had that Thunder Shield. He was able to break onto it right at the start, so that wasn't going to pose him too much of a threat. Another thing to note, Javinator down on the lower left-hand corner did do the sealed gate check and found Strago, so he's now at 5 characters as well, in addition to both the Jones and Siberian Bull grabbing their Cells.
Yep. And Strago on this seed had throw, so we have old man ninja, as it were.
And that poses something interesting to me because Javinator has not done any like real checks that require fighting. So he kind of has a choice right now that others might not have if they put it off too long. Like Jones is going to get all this XP down in the Serpent Trench. Javinator could, if he wanted, say, I don't want any one of these. I'm not saying that he will, because I think I probably would stick with the 4 he already has as well. But if he had wanted access to that throw, he has that opportunity to not have wasted any of that experience ahead of time.
Right. I will say I do like Siberian and Jones going into the Serpent Trench at this point, because you do have a Celis with slots, you do have Cyan with shock, so you can move through and get that XP fairly easily. And I think that's really important in a seed like this, because you mentioned Javinator having 5 characters. That pushes his levels, his enemy levels, up to 15. So go too much further and you risk being almost unsustainably out of range, depending on what you have.
I think it depends on how he thinks about it and where he goes from here, because what he might be doing is he might be thinking, I'll take a risk on the Serpent Trench after doing a bunch of freebies, because that's going to give me a bunch of enemy encounters that we know won't be bosses, and he could just go in there and think, okay, I have shock, I have slot, maybe I'll be able to just blast everything down, or he could do a little bit of a grind ahead of time. But he might be thinking that might be his plan, is get this progress scaling up, and then if he can do Serpent Trench and just blast everything down there, he's going to be doing that with level 15 enemies, and everyone else is going to be doing that with level 9 enemies right now, and he's going to get a lot more experience out of it. That's going to push him further ahead.
Right. Yeah, so it is in some sense very much a risk-reward sort of play. But yeah, if it works out, then Javinator is off to the races.
Yeah, I mean, if this pays off, and it is what I think it is, then this would be a very, very large immediate advantage, especially with that EXP egg that he has too, that he could really use to push someone up way ahead of time.
Right.
You could pop that. I see he's popping it on the Gao, but you could also, pop that on your Celas or your Terra and get them levels early on by that Ragnarok, and they're already online with Ragnarok partway through the seed.
Yeah, I was going to say, speaking of Ragnarok, that was the prize at the Serpent Trench. So, yeah, have fun, everybody.
Ragnaroks and the Dragon Horn at the Relic Shop in Nikia 2 is not the... also pretty nice to see. If anyone picks up Dragoon Boots anywhere along the way, then they either can buy a Dragon Horn early on or know where one is. So that's a pretty good thing to note for later.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another thing that I'm getting more astute at as I've played is the value of jumpers, because honestly, I didn't really pay too much attention to jumping in the original game and also in, the first few weeks of the original KGP that I did here. But having watched chat, having seen some of these, and having talked to y'all, yeah, I'm converting to the church of a few things, and the church of jumpers is one of them.
Yeah, jump can be really, really good, and if you're in a position where you're like, no, you're probably going to be doing a lot of checks, and your chances of finding Poltergeist somewhere along the way are pretty strong, so your chances of having a good spear for it are pretty strong. The problem is that even if they wanted to go jumps, like, who do you have that you can guarantee is going to have a strong lance on this team? No one. So I don't think anyone will necessarily go for it, but that option is technically open.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to know that it's there if the opportunity does present itself.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and there's a Pearl Lance, so... Right as I say that, Jones finds the one weapon that would ensure that you could, if you wanted, use a jump strategy. Well,
right.
Too.
Right.
And altogether, it seems like Javinator's doing just fine getting through the Serpent Trench check so far, so I think this gamble of doing all those free checks early on probably is going to end up having paid off for him.
Yeah, it looks like it will, though looks like his Celis is down a little bit. If he's got enough healing items, and it looks like he does, yeah, he's fine. So, working out quite nicely so far.
Yeah, I really like that play, thinking about it. I wasn't entirely sure at first, and I was like, oh, he's probably going for that fixed encounter spot so he can just rack up the levels off of it.
Right. Meanwhile, Jones is headed into Dome of Ruins, which is actually a move. I think it was a move just in my own seed. I made this move pretty early, and well, you guys will get to see what it results in if you've not played the seed. But I think he'll have some fun. I'll just say.
Yeah, I think this is probably going to be pretty early on most everyone's routes for it, because you already know where Sword Tech is. You can get that Gao fully online very early by just quickly going through the dream and unlocking all those Sword Techs. So seems like a pretty optimal setup if you wanted to do a Sword Tech setup, because you're starting obviously with Cyan and with the person who has Sword Tech just completely coincidentally. So I really expect that's going to be at the forefront of most everyone's minds. Right.
Yeah, getting that Sword Tech up early rather than late, and being able to do Quadra Slice, being able to do Cleave and insta-kill enemies feels pretty good.
Yeah, it's almost, too bad going through the Serpent Trench first when that. Oh, speaking of Poltergeist,
Hi, Poltergeist.
I
Yeah.
guess by mentioning Jump Strat and mentioning that you need to find a good lance, I've accidentally summoned every good lance into Jones's side, whether you want it or not.
Yeah, when I came to this point in when I was doing the dream, my initial thought was, "Oh crap, why am I seeing this here?" And it was admittedly a little bit of a slog for me. I don't remember how long it took me to take him down, but it was kind of rough going, but I was fortunate to be able to get through it.
Yeah, this is up there on the list of things you don't really want to see early on.
It looks like Javinator is mulling over his options as far as relics go and decides to not buy anything at the present time. Meanwhile, chat is busy disqualifying everybody on the spot for not buying dragon horns.
Exactly. I'll admit I'm definitely a part of the Great Church of Dragonhorn and Dragoons, so I feel that myself too.
Yeah, I can understand that. If you've got the money, it's certainly not the worst buy in the world. But I think considering I would say virtually all the runners know that the Ragnaroks are there now, they might just be thinking, okay, well, I can either buy this now or save up money for big old fancy sword that I can go ahead and grab with relative ease, given that they already have one from the Serpent Trench.
Yeah, and especially depending on who can equip the Ragnaroks. Like, I didn't actually see off of the buy screen who among the characters that they have can actually equip it, but if you can just get a full party of Ragnaroks, then you're gonna spend your 200k, or I guess 150k outside of the Serpent Trench on hero rings that we just saw scroll across the screen in the South Figaro World of Ruin Relic shop, instead of spending it on Dragon Horns, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it really is all just a function of what you have available, and this seed seems to be an embarrassment of riches as far as that goes right now.
Yeah, and I think that poses its own interest to me, where you have these 4 players who are very, very close in skill level. Is when you have like a difficult seed, it tends to play to one person's strengths. When you have this seed that throws everything at you, it really becomes about those little things. So it might become about, Javinator's attempt at scaling up his seed quickly, then doing Serpent Trench, which looks like it's starting to not pay off because he just had to reset out of that Guardian fight at Doma World of Balance. And I don't think he's going to find much easier spots elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I know one thing that I did to try to kind of keep ahead of the curve, so to speak, and this, it cost me some time because I ended up doing it more than once, was going to the area right outside of the beginner's house in Ruined Narsh and grinding there. And I wanted to do that to try to keep pace with the progress that I had. It's a reliable spot because you can just run right in and heal, but it also takes a little while, as I saw, much to my detriment as my seed went on.
Yeah, I like the way that Javinator is handling it, though, because he's decided to go and do the Magitech Factory. So what he's banking on is that he can clear those first 2 bosses, that they'll hopefully be something easier for him to handle than Guardian. We already know that it's at very least not Fire Chicken, because that's elsewhere. And he'll use that to get the fixed encounters during the wonderful Mode 7 minecart, as we do find the 3 Stooges at the 2nd spot here in Doma.
Yeah, this one, well, the only thing I can say as to how I played this one is Shock was my friend. And it was a pretty nice friend during this fight.
Yeah, fights like this are probably what you want if you have Shock early on, because you're hitting 3 things. If you expect that HP is going to be about what it would be split between 3 different targets, so it's kind of like hitting one thing 3 times in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be scary because, like Ficta just said in the chat, they can be really nasty at low level with the counters, but as long as you can just blast them down, it's fine. Although he does take the Petrify onto his Gao off of that Delta hit.
Right. I think at this point I had to dig for the 2 remedies I had in my inventory at that point, because I realized in that moment I didn't have any softs, and I freaked out a little bit. But
Yeah,
it
he
looks
does
like,
just get through it though.
yeah, I was gonna say, he managed to push it through and grabs a go-go.
This Go-Go's usually an okay prize, but I feel like in this seed where you've got Ragnaroks everywhere, that Go-Go is not as good when you could just have someone who can like make use of that instead. What worries me is what Siberian Bull just found up in the Funbaba check, which is Tritalk. So if he does not get those fixed damage rolls of the super balls he's throwing, or the stones he's throwing like that pretty easily. I guess he did keep Shock, never mind.
Yeah.
For some reason I thought that Shock was on Gao and I forgot entirely.
Fair. So, I will ask another question, and this is again me being a noob. So, Jones, of course, just completed Cyan's Dream, and at the end of that dream, you just got the sword that came down instead of it giving you a specific item at the end of the dream, not counting what you get on the throne. I assume that means you got nothing out of it except for the sword tech level up? I was a little confused on that point myself.
I assume it means that you got an item as the reward.
Okay. So the reward was simply the character. Okay.
Or the character, yeah. In this case, Go-Go.
Okay. I'm just so used to doing some of those other checks where it would say, hey, you got such and such. So I was a little confused. It didn't really mean too much, but just something I thought I would ask while I was thinking about it.
Yeah, meanwhile on Mr. Entity's side, he's found Dullahan, I believe that looks like the Welk battlefield. And
Yes.
Zavinator has managed to take down Atma Weapon in the Ifrit and Shiva spot at the bottom of Magitech Factory, so that's pretty good. Siberian Bull does pick up Unicorn for his cleared there. We're about to see where the rewards are for the other 2 as well. Looks like an Edgar for Welk, and
Javinator got Phantom.
I mean, Phantom's not the worst. It's probably the worst calmness protection for the final fight, but it could technically be used in a pinch if you executed it perfectly.
Right.
But if he can continue to push forward on this, if he manages to get through this next boss fight, then I can see this sort of slingshotting him a bit forward, especially if that last step of the Magitech Factory check ends up being something that would open up more checks, ends up being like a good character that would open up a lot, Sabin being the prime example at this point.
Right. Looks like we've got a couple of loots of the Imperial Storehouse and a tunnel armor as the second boss in the Magitech Factory. And that Ragnarok sword already going to work for Javinator.
That is going to experience the one mixed blessing of Ragnarok, which is that it does have the very strong magic proc, but that magic proc is Flare, which takes 20 minutes to go off.
Well, I was going to say, seeing an extra 2,000 damage, I think, at the very least, certainly early on, will mitigate that time a little bit.
Yeah, it's always good to get that, but at the same time, it's also like, I really wish this was an Illumina because it's slightly faster.
Yeah.
And stronger.
Yeah, Illumina is a Pearl player. Pearl proc, is it not?
Pearl proc that crits.
Okay.
So everyone now going through the sealed gate. We know that the Strago is the reward for that. We know there's some good loot along the way, so that's probably going to take them a while. It does allow us to focus a little bit on Javinator actually heading into Magitech 3. I assumed he was probably going to try this regardless, but there's been a few people lately I know who do just the first 2 Magitech checks and then Warpstone out, and I'm pretty sure he got a Warpstone somewhere along the line.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he did.
So honestly, like looking at it that way, I almost feel like Mr. Entity might have a little bit of an advantage right now because he has slightly better character setups than the others because he went up and did that Welk check that was Edgar. And because of that, he has access to that full ancient castle sequence plus the Figaro throne. So that's 3 checks in pretty quick order that he could do at any point in time that others don't have access to. So while Javinator might be 1 ahead right now, and Jones and Entity are effectively tied, Bull will be only a very small amount behind. I think he might have an advantage on that basis alone right now.
True. And another thing with Edgar, I don't know if Entity has checked Edgar yet as far as his abilities, but Edgar had natural jump.
Natural jump, and nobody bought that dragon horn.
Think they'll go buy it now? Maybe?
No.
Because of the Ragnarok, yeah.
Because of the Ragnarok and because they're already invested in levels, you don't want to dump more levels into someone else at this point. I think once you sort of start getting into like the mid-15s, you have those Ragnaroks going on 2 characters, there's no way that you're ever going to make up the time investment to get someone else to the proper level.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been like Genji gloves in this seed, there's been so much other stuff that you could just make use of too.
Right. Yeah, Genji gloves, hero rings. And it's kind of an embarrassment of riches as we mentioned earlier, so it's quite the windfall for something like that. And Javinator discovers waiting at the end of the Mode 7 minecart sequence, we have a giant octopus waiting for us.
Well, depending on what the other boss is, this has turned out to be a pretty easy, like, dive into the factory for him, and also depending on the reward, too. This ends up being a character that, again, opens up a lot of easy checks, and that could push him back ahead.
Right.
Got this tense moment before he checks and he goes back to save.
Yeah, exactly. Ah, so I see Javinator is a fellow rail walker like I am. Even though you don't have to run those rails, I find myself doing so anyway, just for the heck of it.
Yep, and you just get Shiva for it, which, you know, he probably needs to start getting those Espers down at this point, so it's not really a bad prize for him. And finds from Baba 2, which, not that difficult of a boss unless you get Blowfish to the face, which I'm not even sure he has access to with Scaled Element on.
Yeah, I'm not certain either. I'm sitting here trying to remember if he decided to toss those at me when I was playing. I think I went into Magitech a little bit later, so might have had that for my run of it because I had more levels.
Yeah, and even then, like, I just looked at his HP, I didn't realize it was quite that high anyways. If he gets Blowfish, he'll just survive, so...
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. His Gal can definitely take one to the face if necessary, but I don't think it'll happen.
Well, it does seem like everyone else is going to follow in his footsteps and head down into the factory themselves, depending on what Bull ends up doing. I know both Mr. Entity and Jones have decided to hop down there and see what they can find.
Yeah. I mean, it's understandable, considering that we do need 8 characters and 12 Espers to be able to go into Kefka's Tower. You can get a pretty fair number of checks in the factory relatively quickly, so it's an understandable move.
Yeah, plus 2 of them being guaranteed to not be able to be characters makes them more likely to be able to be Espers in that case, so
right.
You might as well dive down there, have a chance at 2 to 3 Espers, and know that you're not going to just pick up a bunch of characters and go over your requirement in the end. So at this point where you're at like 1 and 6, you want to do the Esper checks as much as possible.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that number imbalance is probably starting to bother some of the runners.
Yeah, and it's mostly just a concern for these checks that are bundled together because you don't want to get stuck having to do like the entire Magitech factory later on down the line when you've already hit one of those requirements and go over after having spent, the 10 minutes it feels like going down the minecart.
Right. And not even any good Super Mario RPG minecart music to accompany you to make it interesting.
It is, however, a piece of classic gaming history that, if you're ever trying to convince people this game was beautiful for its time, don't show them that part.
Well, I mean, you could only do what you could do with Mode 7, but yeah, it's maybe not one of the most aesthetically pleasing parts of the game. That's alright, though.
I'm really interested in seeing what Bull's going to do from here. I know Javinator now hopping into the Doma Dream sequence. That kind of leaves that as the big question mark to me.
Right. Sorry, I was just noting that we have pretty much simultaneous Atma kills on Entities and Jones's screens. So they're maybe 30 seconds apart in that sequence.
Yeah, it's interesting how they're kind of neck and neck, even though they took like a little bit different of routes around. So like Jones went through the Dream, Entity went through Welk and the Doma World of Balance spot. So those have balanced themselves out. Now they're basically equalized, but after here, they're probably going to have to diverge again.
Yeah. It looks like Siberian is doing at least a little shop interrogation before making that next move. Found the snow mufflers on sale in Zen. I know Bull was also in Albrook, and it turns out Minervas were for sale in Albrook, so if you needed good armor, there you go.
Yeah, I would take the Minerva like 10 times out of 10, but if you get some people who can't equip Minervas, then at least you now have a really strong backup.
Yeah. Yeah, the Minervas obviously are really good for the sheer weight of that element absorption.
Yeah, and most boss attacks in this game, honestly, are the scarier ones are almost all magic. So while Snow Muffler can be really good, especially for the first tier of the Kefka fights, I don't think it'll have as much value as the Minerva in any circumstance, just because of that, in addition to the elemental stuff.
Right.
Bull going for that box and finding Master Puck.
Interesting. I have to see if it yields anything. I didn't take that check myself, and I think he's the only runner on stream who decided to go for that, so I'm curious to see how that turns out.
I mean, I think at this point, if you're hitting up monsters in the boxes, you're probably looking for the other pugs, the group of pugs that can drop Minervas, not necessarily Master Pug, but he's still taking the fight, so guess he's just gonna go for it anyways.
Jack mentioning in chat that Siberian might be fishing for an offering.
That's true. We did have that fixed dice down in the furnace of the Imperial base. Some people would say rightfully burning the fixed dice. There's a chance he might be fishing for the offering for that too. That would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I know. I think I've been on some of the streams where we've had the fixed dice debate before. I noticed in this seed specifically, and I don't know if it's going to be the case for all or most, but the fixed dice actually sold pretty well. So I think I did use that to make some of my purchasing in the seed.
Yep, and the seed fixed dice selling for about 30k, so it's a third of a Ragnarok. I feel like he probably didn't save before he checked that box, and that's probably why he went for it, but we'll take the greatest from it and put the cyan for right now.
Yeah.
But, at least he knows that there's one less option for that monster in a box that he's probably looking for, because he could be looking for either one of the two sort of big monster in a boxes right now.
Right. Meanwhile, Javinator is having a little bit of a time with Poltergeist in the Dream.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that a lot in watching his side of things, is that he did okay getting caught up with the Serpent Trench and with the mine carts as well. But he's actually been having quite a bit of trouble with these boss fights. And I'm not entirely sure if it's just a scaling issue or if he might not have found some of the things that other people have found along the way and might just be at a pretty big gear disadvantage as well.
Yeah. I mean, as it stands right now, his scale is at 24, so that's I'm not sure what his levels are at the moment, but if it's a little bit below that, then that might explain, at least to some degree, why he is having that trouble.
Yeah, and he is having a harder time with this, which is interesting because, you know, Jones and Entity were not significantly further behind at any point when they had similarly difficult boss fights, and they weren't struggling quite as much, so...
Right. Yeah, chat pointing out also that Arrow as a lore spell, which I believe was an original lore spell for this seed for Terra. Yeah, it was pretty strong. I think I was using that with her for a pretty good chunk of the seed because it's dealing out a good bit of damage.
It's especially, I don't think I've seen anyone use it yet, this seed on stream.
Yeah, I don't believe I have either.
People need to not just sleep on lore immediately, it seems. Although I guess if you have Ragnarok's, that's probably better than Arrow on any single target.
Yeah. Yeah, I was using it primarily in multi-target scenarios. All right, so we have dueling Funbabas now on the right side of the screen.
Yeah, I'm pretty impressed that these two dramatically different routes to here, in terms of like the little bits of variance that they had, just did end up being basically exactly the same all through the Magic Factory.
Yeah.
Bull's gonna go up and get that Edgar, so I'll be interested in seeing where he goes from there. You know, if he ends up going for that Ancient Castle sequence and all that soon, that might possibly be a bit of a benefit to him because we haven't seen what's down there yet.
Right. And just as with the beginning boss of the vector section, we have almost simultaneously killing Funbaba at the right-hand side again. So, yeah. Keep on going in stride, you two.
Yeah, the only thing I would say about that, though, is that I feel that the checks that Entity has done that Jones hasn't, and vice versa, Entity took the longer check, so he might still be a little bit ahead based on that, too, if you assume that they'll sort of swap back over and do the same checks that the others already done.
Right.
Because that Welt check, you've got that long walk up into the mines, you've got... Well, I guess Dome, A World of Balance isn't exactly the longest spot in the world.
I mean, it is a little bit of a hike, though.
While we're sort of in this little bit of a holding pattern, while Jones getting through this Guardian fight, Siberian Bull getting through the Dullahan fight, I want to give a quick shout out as well to our rest of our restream team behind the scenes. We have Asherin doing the restreaming and Ceiling Cat doing a wonderful job tracking as always.
Yeah, I was sitting there trying to bring up links, and I'm so used to links in other channels. Oh well, but yeah, definitely, absolutely. Having a good restream team is fantastic to making this whole thing run. So thank you, Asherin. Thank you, Ceiling Cat. Much obliged. And thank you for putting up with me, Anth, especially coming in. For folks not familiar, Anth had to step in at the last second because our original restreamer was not our original COCOM was not able to make it in. So kind of saved my bacon, as it were, because I'm not sure how well I would have been able to comment on 4 people streaming by my lonesome. So definitely appreciate that.
Yep. I wasn't expecting to be here 20 minutes before it started, but I saw the thing. I'm like, well, I don't have anything else going on tonight. I've been wanting to get back in on this now that now that I have free time again. So now's the best day for it.
Yay, free time.
And he's gonna go do Doma. And it
Yeah.
looks like Jones is gonna go do Welk. So they really did just swap places.
Yeah. All right. Meanwhile, Siberian just took care of Welk, and Javinator is also in the dream. So, or is at least taking on the. Sorry, not in the dream, but he's taking on the Stooges. So, it's we're running through a lot of the sort of similar checks as we've had, and it's been interesting to see just where all these runners have gone and how much they've been crossing each other's relative activity streams, if you will.
Yeah, it really is because, I was expecting that if they all took different routes, that there would be a little bit of a gap emerging between them as one of them ended up being more viable than the other.
Mhm.
But that really hasn't happened here.
No, not particularly. They may have gone different directions, but it's been those different directions sort of weaving in and out, going the same place, at least for this point.
Here's the question: does Mr. Entity have an easier time with this fire chicken than the other two have had?
Yeah, fair.
It's looking like Javinator's gonna go do Mount Zozo, so this will be the first check in a while that we're seeing that someone hasn't already done on stream.
Right, yeah. I'll be curious to see, with the party that he has and the gear that he has, will he go after the dragon here? Because the dragons are not scaled, so they can be nasty if you hit them low enough. Also, there's your Dragoon boots if you needed them.
Yeah, I've been hoping someone will actually go Dragoon. I don't expect that anyone will, but I'm still trying to hold out hope for it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, aside from Terra going down, it looks like he's not having a particularly difficult time with this fight, so I think he'll end up just sailing through. What's going to interest me right now is will Javinator try the dragon on Mount Zozo? Because dragons are not scaled in the seed as one of the many little quirks. And so he's probably strong enough, but it looks like he's just going to bypass it entirely.
Yeah, I was curious about that myself, and I can understand either way, really.
Yeah, I think when you're at the point where he knows he needs at least, 10 more characters, espers to get there. He's already in the 30s in terms of levels. He's set for Kefka's tower. He will be set for Kefka's tower by the time he gets there. So I guess there's no real reason to take that risk, as we do see Jones looking like he's going to go up and actually do Kefka at Narsh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think when I was up on Zozo, I took a peek at the dragon, and then the dragon ate cyan for lunch, and I decided I was better off just going my merry way.
Yeah, and I think when you have this seed that's just throwing items at you too, there's no reason to go for it for the item check either.
Right.
Now, one thing is Javinator did find Bahamut on top of Mount Zozo, and had this seed not thrown every single piece of good equipment it could at our runners tonight, we might have actually seen that, because multi-summon is on, so that would have been good if you found it earlier.
Right, yeah, that's correct.
Next big question is, what is this Kefka at Narsh?
It's at Matu.
It's probably fine. It's not the scariest thing to find there. It's not exactly a complete picnic either. If goes the wrong way, it's gonna really go the wrong way. But if it goes the right way, it'll just be a walkover.
Yeah.
As being sort of pointed out by Ficta in the chat as well, it kind of does come down a little bit to what abilities Atma ends up having under the scaled element flag. And this is not on the new alpha version of the next patch for the randomizer that has Fallen One reduced, so unless that's been removed and I didn't notice, still an opportunity.
Well, good news is Jones was able to get through that Atma fight at Kefka with pretty reasonable levels and what have you, so that'll be a good chunk of experience and a nice fulfillment, at least in terms of levels. We'll see what the prize is from it. It is Fenrir.
That's a really good prize. That's the free calmness protection. That's honestly debatably the best calmness protection. Maybe Golem's slightly better. I don't really remember myself which one's technically better.
Generally speaking, when I've had the opportunity, I've had Golem myself, and I admit I think Fenrir does multiple images, correct?
Yes, it casts image on the whole party.
Okay, yeah, it took me a second, honestly, to try to remember it, because one of the things that I also need to learn is a little bit more about what the Espers do, so, but I usually more key in for Golem when I see it.
Yeah. They're pretty even in the end, like they perform the same functions. One's probably technically better than the other, but I don't know which one that is. We are going to see Javinator go in and check the Figaro throne room, though. Gonna stop at the entrance.
I was gonna say possibly check the throne room. Well, we do know Siberian has a date at the opera, so hopefully they enjoy their musical interlude.
Seems like we're having some technical issues down there, based on that wonderful technical difficulties screen.
Oh dear. Well, hopefully we can get it hopefully Javinator can get it patched up pretty soon, and we can get back to what has been a very rapid run in many senses so far.
And Bull has gone for the Opera House. That's another check that no one's done yet. Jones now going to start that Figaro World of Ruin sequence. So that will be, again, interesting to see. It's unfortunate that we didn't see what he grabbed out of that Figaro throne check, but I can just look at our little cheat sheet here and tell you that if he did pick it up, it would have ended up being the Esper Odin.
Right, yeah. I do remember that now that you mention it. Alright, looks like Javinator is back, so good job getting those technical difficulties all sorted out.
The real question for me is whether or not this Figaro Castle sort of sequence that I've been picking up this entire time ends up actually being worth it or not.
True.
It's probably just me who just absolutely loves going for that one as soon as humanly possible because it seems like a great sequence of events. So I'm always happy to see it pay off when it does.
It's one of those, I mean, it does take a bit of time, especially, throwing the ancient castles part into it. But I'd say particularly in seeds where you do have to kill dragons, it certainly has a lot of merit because you've got a dragon, you've got potentially 2 major checks in addition to that. And given that it is in proximity, because if you're doing one, then it doesn't really hurt you too much to do the other, it certainly has some merit to it. Looks like Jones has found everybody's favorite painting demon, Chatternook.
Yeah, it's looking like Javinator's about to be undisqualified as he's looking like he's going to pick up that dragon horn now.
Yeah. So, Chad is excited again. Congratulations, Chad. Meanwhile, Siberian has found, well, Ultros at the opera.
He's one Ultros too soon. He's got Ultros 3. He needed Ultros 2 to be full vanilla, but we can call this the French vanilla Ultros.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know, I was doing a seed earlier, and I was thinking, looking at this opera sequence, thinking about how this is probably the most single dramatic reward reveal in the entire randomizer. And it is either an Esper or an item at this point, but you get that big spotlight, whatever it is just comes down from the ceiling dramatically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's always fun. I always get a kick out of it whenever Celes is in the party, because then you see Celes falling on top of Celes.
Well, the Strength Plus Esper is a pretty good prize and a seed that wants to basically just dump a bunch of Ragnaroks on your head.
True.
But, it's a bit late for that, unfortunately, because he's probably not going to get that much more out of it.
Yeah. Alright, it looks like Siberian is going to go down Leet River, I would presume. Yep.
That's an interesting one. I wonder if he's going to actually fight any of the encounters, or if he's just going to try and run from them to get the thing down early, because this is all escapable on this flag set. No, he's going to actually go for kills at least.
I'm guessing he feels like he needs to get more experience on his party, because his scale is up to 27 right now, so it's not super high, but it's starting to creep up there a little bit.
And that's the other thing about progress times 3, though, isn't it, too, is it's not just that it's more difficult scaling. There's almost a psychological effect, too, where you become more, like, really hyper-aware of whether or not you're ahead or behind, and it can change the way you think about things because you're more conscious of wanting to get those levels, even if you might not necessarily need them at that point.
Right, yeah. That was one of the things I think that sort of set in for me as I was playing the seed, was I wanted to make sure that I was above the curve, so to speak, levels wise. And then I came to discover toward the end of the seed that wasn't all that necessary, particularly, even though I had not grabbed the Ragnaroks like all the smart people on stream were doing.
Well, if Jones was just fishing for a good monster in a box, he just found Katana Soul for that offering.
Yeah.
In the vanilla location.
Well, there you go.
I don't know if you want to find Katana Soul in the seed, because what are you going to use offering on if you've already probably sold that fixed dice, or already basically decided you're not going to use it?
Right. So if I'm not mistaken, as I think people were rather loudly telling me when I was beginning the KGP, offering undoes the ability for Ragnarok to proc, correct?
Yep, it actually makes Ragnarok and Illumina worse than you would be if you didn't have the offering on.
Okay.
There's very few weapons that you want offering on. Usually it's ones that do fixed damage, as we do see the dreaded double freeze on Mr. Entity's side with that Tritalk check.
Yeah. Fortunately, though, it looks like he was able to get out of that fairly quickly. But, having to rely on the Flare proc to be able to get through Tritalk feels not so good.
Yeah, but you get that one.
Yeah, exactly. You get it, and it works, but you gotta try to get it.
Another thing worth noting, Jones, getting to the bottom of that ancient castle, is going to fight the dragon, but also found his 8-character lock, so he only has the Esper checks left to go. He got 6 Espers left. I have to wonder if he might be planning at some point in time on doing the ever-beloved, depending on who you ask, auction house play.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I was going to say that myself. Yeah. How lucky do you feel tonight?
I mean, if it's anything like I had earlier, where it was double Esper, it pushed me through pretty quickly, so...
Oh, nice. Well, that's the luck that we all dream of. The rest of us get imps and all the wrong stuff.
Yep, the seed I was playing earlier did the auction house play, and the 3 things in it were 2 espers and a gem box, so that was a pretty good prize.
Oh yeah, I'm jealous, frankly. So excuse me while I turn green with envy.
So I'm a big fan of the auction house play tonight if he decides to go for it to shore up that esper count quickly.
Ha! Yeah, fair enough.
Siberian Bull has not had the best time with this river. He's found level 30 magics now. Earlier, he found Dark Force, like Kefka's tower formation, and lost his Terra for a moment due to roulette landing on her. So, he's not having the best of times here.
No.
And I really wonder why he's bothering to fight the level 30 magic fight in this case. He must be trying to learn spells in that case. Or he doesn't know that all runnable is on and just didn't think of it, which I know happens to me like all the time.
Yeah, that was what I was going to go with myself. He may not be aware that he can run from all that. I'm sitting here trying to think, I mean, considering we've seen 4 runners, it's hard to keep track of all the inventories, but I'm not certain if he has the smoke bombs. I would presume he probably has at least a few, but
I mean, he has warp stones, and warp stones are for sale if he knows where he can just quickly use a warp stone and get out of it. He can just go get more. He could be trying to learn spells, or again, he could just not know what the flag is on, which, happens to all of us from time to time.
right.
It looks like Mr. Entity's about to fight your friend, the Storm Dragon, on Mount Zozo.
Ah, well, I'm sure he'll have a much better time with it than I did, because he's actually coming up here with good gear and levels and stuff, so...
Yeah. I suppose the other option is River Doom over here on Siberian Bull's side.
No, thank you, I'm good.
Another one of those situations where you really hope that you'd gotten Luminous instead of Ragnarok's.
Eh, fair.
Davinator's looking like he's going to be the first to do the Terra Zozo check, which I'm interested in seeing, because I feel like we know where most of the characters are in the seed right now, so I feel like any check has to kind of be an item or an esper, or a very, very low chance of, like, Mog or something. So, what are we going to find up here is a very, very important thing.
Mm-hmm. Looks like Entity was able to take down that blasted dragon, and so thank you, Entity, for visiting a little bit of vengeance for me, although you had no idea that that was a thing.
I mean, at this point in time, he has 5 Ragnaroks, he's in his 40s, there's nothing that can stop him, he can fight any dragon, go to any place.
Right.
Inferno on Zozo is pretty okay thing to find. I mean, I'm not expecting any boss that any of our runners find at this point to give them too much difficulty, mostly because the really difficult bosses are kind of already gone. But, oh, it's the auction house time.
Alright, well, have fun, Jones. Have fun going through the inventory of having very rich people buying tinctures.
You pay attention to everything else. There's auction house for me to run.
Yeah. All right. Well, well, looks like Javinator got through that pretty easily in Zozo, and is going to pick up the items on the sides and then discover the prize at Zozo, which is Trato.
And Bull also threw Doom, so we're about to see what's at that river check. And we're about to see a Genji armor at the auction house. So Jones getting all of the hot garbage at the auction house today.
Looks like Siberian got Ragnarok out of the Elite River check, so at least got an Esper for his troubles.
Yeah, and I think probably any one of our runners at this point in time is looking for espers over characters right now. Obviously, characters unlock espers, so if you still need the characters, you want them, but this was definitely a 1-6 early on seed, so.
Right.
Yeah, and as is being pointed out by people in chat, Jones is not auction housing in the way that we normally see people auction house, which is you go in, you buy something in the World of Ruin, you run out, you save, you do it again, and then you reset whenever you see an imp. So he's had to go through the entire imp auction.
Yeah. That feels really bad. I know the way that I do it myself is I'll save, go in, see what the item is, and then if it's not an Esper, I immediately reset and go back in. So feels bad, Jones, but hopefully he'll get something out of it. Hopefully the Esper will pop up now, and hopefully for his sake at least.
The only thing about that is you want to generally buy the items that are items, because if you get them out of the pool, then they can't show up again. So
Yeah,
if you have the money, then you usually want to try and knock those out. But he has found a Genji helmet, so that glowing stone's still going to be available, and I think this means that there is at most only one Esper in the auction house tonight. My deepest apologies for ever suggesting that this was a good idea.
Well, I would say the enthusiasm just by itself has made it worth it, I think, for us tonight. Hey, there's your Esper.
You know, he didn't really lose that much by not saving and resetting, I feel, because the time it takes you to run out and then go save, I feel like the one imp auction's gonna come out to not be that much slower. So it's worked out for him.
Yeah. Alright, so Stray is now in Jones's possession, and I don't remember if there was just one Esper there. He's assuming that there's only one, so.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's only 4 item slots in the World of Ruin auction house, so he has bought all 4 of them.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say there probably was gonna be something similar to that, so yeah, it's good that you were able to clarify that for me, so appreciate it.
Yeah, like Sulfur just said in chat, Genji armor was the other one. Although I think a Genji helmet is still technically in the pool, but I think that's the different price than that 20k Genji armor, now I think about it. But hey, at least he gets a full set of Genji gear if he wants it for some reason. Gonna now go to the Thief in the Woods and Zen and not take it for 39.5k.
Yeah. At least not yet, anyway. Yeah, unfortunately, the 39k is the more reasonable of the two prices. I think the other price was somewhere around 60-something thousand, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, looking at our sheet, it was a nice and brisk 63,659.
No, thank you.
And answer the question in chat, the starting characters tonight were Cyan with Shock and a Gao with Steel and Sword Tech.
Yep. So, interesting start all around. One of the biggest...
That's no, that's not Vanilla Starlet. Starlet's in Hauser's Mansion. Seraphim's usually there, but does get an Esper out of that Zen check.
Oh, there you go. It is worth noting for those of you who are have come in here relatively short time ago, the starting average level on this flag is turned off, so any characters that join in later are at minimum level, so it's definitely influenced how this seed has gone, and having Shock and Sword Tech to begin with on Gao and Cyan has definitely proved beneficial in many ways to how the runners have done some of the things that they've done.
Alright, what's the check here? Zone Seek or Genji armor? And apparently a Minerva down in Zone Eater for Javinator.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, I'll be honest, I didn't even really think about getting or going into Zone Eater, so. Oh well, oopsie.
Yeah, it's the thing about Zone Eater 2 is looting Zone Eater is oftentimes one of the worst experiences in the game just because of the random guys running back and forth. So ending up with that Minerva for that effort is a really, really good prize because I think probably a lot of people would skip that. Also gets Shout for his work there.
Yeah.
I think Jones is up here doing the Tri-Talk check. Does run into the dragon that I think he was probably just fine going for, but might have hoped he could skip. But probably not worth going around to skip. Does end up finding our good friend Dirt Durgan, the worst Durgan.
Ugh, yeah. That initial quake is just painful.
Yeah, that's deeply unfortunate.
Also, thank you for the folks who are praising us in chat. You're praising mostly Inf because, well, he's doing the lion's share of the good chatting. I'm just bouncing things off, so.
Oh, you always need a good co-host for it, so you're doing fine.
Yeah, well, I try. Oh.
Trying to figure out, I think Javinator is at the tunnel armor check. I couldn't remember if I saw the screen shake or if he's outside Figaro because I was focused on this Dirt Dragon fight and watching Jones try and sneak past the Dirt Dragon here.
Yeah.
Nope, that is the Figaro check, okay.
And yes, absolutely praise to Asherin and Ceiling Cat as well, who are taking care of the restreaming and tracking respectively, so much obliged to everybody on the team.
And of course, also greatest praise to our 4 runners tonight for putting on an excellent show. Very close, very overlapping each other, and sort of making me question whether I've seen something already or not. Javinator resetting out of Figaro Cave, so looks like he is not having the best time there.
No, it doesn't seem so. I believe Javinator was in the ruined South Figaro Cave.
He'd finished Zone Eater already before the reset.
Right.
And Jones picking up a snow muffler from that dragon, so I guess it's not the worst thing that he found it. If he wants just a good piece of armor to have temporarily, he has a lot of Genji armor on his team right now.
Right. And Javinator doing the Ebbett's Rock check to feed some coral to the treasure chest. Hopefully he'll have good luck finding that coral because that can kind of be a pain in the butt.
Everyone's favorite game mechanic of count to 22.
Or if you're like me, make sure you get at least 25 just so you know you're good.
Or if you're like me, the last time I did this, which I think actually was the one time I was restreamed during the last KGP, accidentally count to 21.
Oh. That stinks. Because it feels really bad when you talk to that treasure chest and then you realize you don't have enough and you're losing probably, 15 seconds or so just with all the slow chat. Certainly the first time at least.
Oh, it ends up being way more than 15 seconds because he takes all of your coral and you have to start completely over again.
Oh, does he now? I forgot about that. / maybe didn't know that in the first place. That makes it much worse.
Jones is not going to be happy with what he just found at that Tri-Talk check, though. He found a fixed dice, which this is not a seed that's been very fixed dice friendly. Sometimes there are seeds where that's really good. This is not one of them.
Ooh. Well, He can sell it
I'm not
and
sure what he would buy at this point, unless maybe those snow mufflers that we found somewhere along the ways, because I think he has all of the Ragnaroks he can use right now.
Hmm. I mean, snow mufflers or Minervas, if he knows where they are.
Right, I forgot about the Minervas for sale too.
Jack mentioning in chat the dice are never good for anything more than money. I will say, in my early seeds, I got pretty excited about getting fixed dice and used them and so on and so forth. But I have come more around to the idea that, especially as you get a bit later into the game, you're much better off going with stuff that you know is going to be more reliable and consistent damage than quite literally rolling the dice and hoping that it works out. So, yeah, I'm much more in y'all's camp now.
Personally, I fall on the side of myself being extremely lazy and finding fixed dice to be a very good lazy option that I can just sort of sit back and hope for the best. And then if something goes wrong, it's not my fault. It's just the dice rolled too low.
That's fair.
So fixed dice are as good as you're willing to blame them for anything that goes wrong from that point onwards.
Well, I was gonna say, given that I'm a perfectionist, I blame everything on myself, even if it's not my own darn fault. So, it's just a matter of temperament, I suppose.
Javinator finally getting to the end of Ebbett's Rock, which was being endlessly tormenting him tonight, and finds Senor Behemoth at the end of it.
Ooh, it is worth noting, one of the flags that is on this, well, I say that is available this seed, is the no undead bosses is not turned on this seed. So if Javinator knows that, he gets to the second stage of that senior super pseudo behemoth, and then one Phoenix down, and his problems will be solved.
Yep, he does know it's on. I was about to say, here's the thing though, is that the last time I saw a race like this where there was the no undead flag off, what ended up happening is everyone forgot the no undead flag was off and just fought the bosses anyways.
Or you can use a Revivify and do the same thing. So yeah, Javinator had it in hand. All right, we got Seraphim out of there.
That puts us at a very, very interesting sort of state right now. Because right now, if you look at just the raw numbers, Jones in the lead at 11 Espers, 8 characters, about to do that tunnel armor check and hopefully find his last Esper there. Javinator at 11 and 7. Entity has fallen behind a little bit at 8 and 8, and Siberian Bull a little bit behind that at 7 and 6. I feel like we're kind of reaching a point where Javinator could catch that up if Jones gets a string of the wrong rewards. So this Dodaluma fight here, pretty easy outside of the whole hyperdrive right off the bat thing. If this ends up being an Esper, that's really good. If it ends up not being an Esper, that could be a problem.
Right, yeah. And it ends up being that 12th Esper. So Carbuncle finishes up the count for Jones, and it is, well, if Jones chooses, it is time to invade the tower.
Yeah, I kind of expect that anyone in the seed is going to just hit the tower the second that it becomes available to them, because they're all scaled up to pretty good levels, and the only thing that's going to stand in their way, possibly, is the bosses inside the tower. And in all likelihood, a few extra levels is not going to make that any better for them.
Right.
Meanwhile, Javinator meeting our old friend Stairs boss.
Hey, if he's like me and he's on a fitness program where he's got to have 10,000 steps, probably am going to be in pretty good shape at the top of the tower.
Yeah, never a bad excuse to get in a bit of cardio, and we know that the reward for this is Umaro, so that'll be that 8th character. Oh, and an Illumina at the top of it. So that's an even better prize.
Uh-huh, yeah. And Gao gets the Ragnarok.
That's an interesting choice to me because I'm not sure I would put that Ragnarok on the Gao over the Celas at that point if your Gao's just going to be using Sword Tech.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, Sword Tech just, I mean, I guess you get increased damage, but, you know, the Sword Tech would mitigate, obviously, the ability to use any flares, and so, yeah, I'm the same way. So I'll be curious to see what boss is at the top of Fanatic's Tower, because I certainly didn't do this check, and to be a nice little bit of extra information. I know I can use the tracking sheet, but I don't care.
Oh, it's Diet Magi Master, I see.
Nice. I don't think I've heard him called that.
Meanwhile, Mr. Entity has entered the RNG Cave of Doom, and I think I saw him accidentally shore at the chest. But I wasn't sure if he'd actually gone and gotten any coral yet at that point, so I don't think it actually put him behind outside the talking.
Right.
Jones now the first to descend into Kefka's tower.
And at 1 hour 20 minutes, that is a very good time given the rigors of the seed, at least in some sense, with the scaling and whatnot.
Yeah, that's the thing with Progress times 3, though, is that if you get a really good setup early on, it can often just be faster than seeds that are scaled lower because you get so much more XP quickly. You actually reach that point of snowball a lot faster than you can in a Progress times 2 seed in some ways.
Yeah, that's true. And that is worth mentioning. It's something, honestly, that I didn't really think about all that much. But yeah, the XP that you get is definitely very good. And so when you get to this point, you feel nice and powerful.
I think the real question at this point is what bosses could be here that we haven't seen yet anywhere that could possibly pose a problem. And there's a few that come to mind. Magi Master, of course, being the forefront of it since we just saw number 24. Goddess is still out there as well, which can be a giant pain depending on your setup, especially with a group like this where you're going to have so many Ragnarok, so many people who want to just attack constantly.
Right.
They can't do that if you get Goddess.
Yeah, that's a little trickier in that sense. Meanwhile, Kefka has popped up in the middle of his own tower, so, nice to see you decided to join the rest of us, Mr. Evil Clown, sir.
I feel like this is almost better lore-wise than the Inferno fight being there in some ways.
Fair. Like, oh, you want to come and fight me? Okay, I'll toy with you for a little bit, then dash off, and we can resume this at the top.
Did I just see Goner off of Senor Behemoth?
I admit, oh, yeah, looks like it. That's not a fun thing to see.
I mean, it didn't hit that hard. It was only 1,000 where he has 4,000, but that is a waste of time. Just like the idea of this reality-bending behemoth in this cave.
Yeah, it looks like I'm thinking that Mr. Entity maybe was not aware or had forgotten about the undead flag being off. But not that it mattered too much, because he did a whole crap ton of damage.
You know, sometimes you just want to hit things.
Yeah, fair. Just burn through it.
Well, Javinator is now down at the end of Fanatic's Tower, has finished that up. I'm going to be very interested in seeing where he goes from here, because this could be the end. Is he going for the river?
That seems interesting. Well, it's going shopping at least.
Trying to remember what else was at the shop. I know Super Balls, as you just mentioned in chat, is a possibility.
Yeah, Super Balls are here.
I noticed he's sitting there with the Minerva in his inventory, so I'm assuming he just hasn't equipped that yet.
One would hope. And throwing away a Minerva like that would be, well, a luxury and also more than a little sad.
Nope, just gonna sell things and run away for now, which is an interesting question. I'm wondering if he just hasn't bothered equipping the Minerva because he's kind of sitting there thinking, I'm not having any trouble with anything right now, I'll do that equip menu later, but I feel like that's kind of a not necessarily good play.
It's hard to say. I'm not really sure.
But one thing I do want to point out while we've been trying to figure this out and watching Jones start his dive into Kefka's tower is Mr. Entity has caught up quite a bit in the meantime. He's now also at that 11 and 8 spot, so...
Yeah, he has raced through these last couple of checks. It's been pretty interesting.
Oh, Dav did have the 12 Esprits, okay. That would explain a lot, so he was just going selling for something else. I'm not sure which one was missed either, so that'll be a group try and figure that one out. Unless he did Narsh early. Narsh weapon shop might be a possibility.
Maybe.
I don't know. I'm going to spend too much time trying to figure this out if I do.
Yeah.
All I know is that Guardian was leader, so I felt that wasn't worth mentioning.
Yeah, that poor leader was leading for about 5 seconds, and now he's leading the way to the, well, basically the 7th circle, I suppose.
And there's number 128. Inferno's little brother just showing up to say hi.
Well, I suspect he won't be around for too much longer.
No, almost certainly not. That's okay, we've got 2 more chances for these towers to show what they got here.
Fair. Looks like Entity is headed into Zozo to try to find that last Esper, and of course we know that he will be happy with what he finds because it will be number 12. So I suspect he will be haunting Kefka's tower within, I'd say, probably a few minutes.
Yeah, and with how much faster he's been going towards the end of the seed versus Javinator, I'm trying to figure out if that's just been a routing thing or if that's been just having a legitimately stronger team. So there's a chance he might actually catch up inside Kefka's tower depending on how quickly he gets out of here.
It is possible, yeah. I feel like Jones is, I'd say, fairly comfortably in the driver's seat right now. But yeah, you could very well see Entity catch up to Javinator depending on how things go with the respective fights.
Yeah, and another thing too worth noting for Jones versus everyone else who's here is he's the only one who did that Kefka at Narsh check. And we didn't find Golem anywhere else in the seed, so he's the only one with that good calmness protection Esper. Everyone else is going to be relying on either luck, just raw evade stat, or I don't think that they found Life 3 anywhere. They could use Phantom if they're really good with it and really careful. Also, multi-summon being on helps too. But he's definitely got the easier way around that than anyone else.
Right. Yeah, I do I do remember seeing Life 3 at some point, but I don't remember precisely which Esper it was on. And unfortunately, Jones had to reset out of that goddess fight. Yeah, this was just in my own seed. This was one of the less pleasant moments, was trying to get through that goddess fight, because I originally, what I did when I came into KT was I came in with 5 characters, and that goddess fight popped on a solo Terra, which unfortunately I couldn't quite pull off, so I had to end up warping out of Kefka's tower and restructuring my parties and going back through to be able to get through some of these bosses a little bit better.
Yeah, so we're now going to see Jones take the other fight instead, which ends up being Air Force. Probably just taking this opportunity to think about how he's going to get around that goddess fight while still making progress elsewhere. Air Force unfortunately going to knock down poor Locke immediately, but this should be a pretty easy fight for him.
Yeah, having the advantage of a Terra with Ragnarok that can hit hard is certainly going to help. I know, in how I did this, I ended up having to sort of go back through and fight some of the bosses with other characters just to make sure that I was able to make some progress myself. So, like you were suggesting earlier, trying to make progress and think about some other strategies.
Although it is looking like he's having a little bit of trouble, and if this shrapnel ends up hitting, yeah, he's going to have to reset again.
Yeah, ugh.
Well, this is a good opportunity for other 2 runners that are in or entering Kefka's tower to catch up.
Right, yeah. This is, I know the Goddess and Air Force fights with me were the ones I think that caused me the most trouble, because I was on pace for a fair bit better time, and then I ran up against those 2, had some trouble dealing with them, and that ultimately cost me being able to have a really good finish time myself. So I definitely can empathize with what Jones is going through right now, albeit he was going through it about an hour before I did.
Yeah, he's just trying to get his way through at this point, and really trying out everything else. Jack pointing out that there's that Illumina in play for Jab. I'm not sure that's the one you were mentioning in Kefka's tower, though, because he did get the Illumina at the top of Fnatic's tower, which no one else has gone for, so that's actually helped him out quite a bit there.
Alright, so Jones trying Air Force again, and hopefully we'll get a better run of it this time, although unfortunately it's down to Terra really quickly.
Yeah, and that's expected. I mean, he has the 2 sort of throwaway characters here.
Yeah.
He's just gonna go for the Terra at this point and hope he gets through. Put the Thunder Shield on. I'm curious to, as Victor just said in chat, why he's not breaking the Thunder Shield and hoping that gets him through. Probably just thinks this is a bit safer.
Oh, it looks like he's getting some pretty good misses here so far, and the way he's got his armor set up, of course, he's getting the benefit of that wave cannon healing him. And just pulls it out by the hair on my chinny chin chin.
Well, he did get through it, so that's a plus, but unfortunately that also means that now he has to figure out that goddess fight, and what I expect he'll do is he'll maneuver this Terra into place, take that Thunder Shield off of her, re-equip her with the weapons she had before, and swap that Thunder Shield over to the character that he has with the goddess fight.
Yeah, that would make sense. Also, it seems Entity's screen has disappeared somehow?
Yeah, his stream's been lagging a little bit. Unfortunately, some minor technical difficulties, but it looks like it's coming back now.
Yep. I was going to say, just after I mentioned that it was gone, it came back. So, go me, I guess.
It's the pluses and minuses of live broadcasting. Sometimes things go slightly wrong.
Yep. Oh, well. Hey, it happens.
And as Jav and Entity get through these two fights that we got going here in Kefka's Tower, all eyes probably gonna be on this goddess fight on Jones's side.
Yeah, definitely. All right, choosing to go ahead and go with the... Oh, looks like he put Offering on Cyan. Just gonna go ahead and try to deal as much raw damage as possible. And yeah, I think switched around that Thunder Shield too, so... Sacrificing the possibility of those procs, but getting the 4 hits out quickly certainly makes things a little bit easier.
Yeah, it does bypass love tokens. There's that.
Yeah.
As was pointed out by Fict in chat. I was trying to figure out why it was going there. It's, not the best because obviously you lose the Ragnarok proc, but probably is better for this one very, very, very specific circumstance.
Right. And he does it. It took a little bit of doing, but Goddess is down, and so Jones should be on the path to Kefka very soon.
Yep, he's got all 3 of those bosses down, so he's just gonna have the walk forward into the fight part at this point. And speaking of Goddess fights, we're about to see Javinator take his stab at it.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how Javinator approaches this, because he also brought some of his I suppose you might call them bait characters into the battle. Go with a solo mimic strat.
Oh, there's that arrow usage that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, there you go. That's one of those things that's good when you get the love token on you. You can mitigate it by doing that. So good thinking on his feet on Javinator's side.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna have too much of a problem with this. He hit for 9k on the first turn. This is probably pretty over. He just needs to actually just get this last bit of damage out.
Right. Meanwhile, Jones hits the beginning of the Kefka fights at about 1 hour 36. So we'll see how his strategy sets up. Uses Cleave immediately to go ahead and take care of that back arm, and which obviously makes things more than a little easier.
Well, we are seeing Jones on this first tier of Kefka as well. Does just cleave out the hand first. I don't think this first tier is going to pose anyone too much of a problem because of Sword Tech Gao, but I've been wrong before.
Well, I saw that a moment ago that his Cyan took a hit for, I think it was 68 damage, so that is a big relief, because one of the bigger worries on tier 1 is those physical attacks. And if you've got a good enough defense to help mitigate that, then I suspect you feel at least a little bit better about, well, everything else coming up, or at least a good chunk of it coming up.
Yeah, one thing Jones could have done too if he'd have felt threatened by it is he could have, with multi-summon, cast that Fenrir early and just avoided all the physical attacks on this first tier entirely. Javinator now through that Goddess fight as well. Mr. Entity through his first Warring Triad fight, so they will both be very, very shortly behind. Javinator still has 1 boss left, Entity still has 2.
Yeah. So all 3 of them are making a really, really good pace here through Kefka's Tower. So it's good to see their strategies are panning out, and they're able to flex that overwhelming power that they have.
Yeah, this is pretty by the books for Jones here, as he's on his way to tier number 2. Javinator about to hit that Air Force fight. Depending on, I think he probably has a little bit better of a setup for these fights than Jones did. He has his Cyan over on the Air Force side, which might be a bit easier, as well as his Cellas. So he's got 2 over there. He's perfectly in shape.
Yeah. And I see Entity has Cyan and Gal over on the Goddess side of things, so 2 very strong party members able to deal with Goddess and hopefully be able to avoid queuing the love token or trying to skip around it, I suppose. And assuming he's able to do that, then I think he should be in good shape as well.
Yeah, I imagine he'll just use his sword tech on his Gao and shock on his Cyan. Unfortunately, that lag issue coming back, so we're not quite able to see it yet.
Alright, well, it looks like Air Force went down pretty quickly for Javinator, and I suspect Goddess is going to go down pretty soon, and does go down for Entity, so yeah, they're both just cruising through these fights. It's pretty good to see. They're executing them about as well as you could ask for, really.
Yeah, that kind of pushes, that kind of changes around, kind of increases the pressure a little bit, doesn't it? You know, if Jones makes a mistake, has one bad bit of RNG here, he could end up in 3rd place on the stream with how fast they're managing to catch up to him.
Yeah, that's true. It's definitely a very short lead here for Jones. All 3 of them have done really well. I mean, as we were talking about earlier, Entity went from being 8-8 to being 8-12 basically in the blink of an eye, so it's become a close race in very quick fashion.
Yeah, he does have that double freeze going on, as was mentioned in chat, and no way of getting it undone, so this is a little bit of a sketchy situation for Jones to get through.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing that I didn't learn until a bit later myself also, is that if you get frozen like that and you have somebody with fire, then, well, just set your characters ablaze and they're good to go. Alright, so Entity is through the Air Force fight and is progressing onward. Meanwhile, Javinator is about to hit the Kefka fight himself, so Jones is working on tier 2, whereas Javinator is about to start tier 1. So yeah, it looks like this one's going to be a photo finish, y'all. It's great to see.
Yep, and, you know, not too far behind them is going to be Siberian Bull up there. We haven't talked about him in a little bit. He is in that Ebbets Rock check, which, as we know, is an Esper, so he's going to be in Kefka's tower very soon as well. So he'll be a ways behind, but he won't be too far behind the other 3.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's still definitely going to finish with a respectable time. Which, I know whenever we were getting ready to run the seed, I was peeking in whenever I signed into the actual race room and had seen some discussion earlier about the seed, they were talking about the idea that really any time under or around 2 hours could conceivably be considered a pretty strong victory on this seed just because of the way it was set up. So yeah, all of these runners are on pace to finish really well. So definitely plaudits to all of them. You guys are doing fantastic. Hopefully I can learn a few things.
That's what it's all about, what you can learn from watching streams like this. And one thing that we can learn is that I don't think anyone's going to have too much of a trouble with tier 3 tonight after they get girl down, because if there's one thing to be said about Ragnarok above Illumina, it doesn't full heal girl when you hit her in the face.
Right. I know when I went into the Kefka fights myself, I got to tier 3. I think my main offense, because I didn't end up picking up the Ragnaroks, shame on me, but my main offense was Aura Lance, Dragonhorn, Edgar, and he came down, I think I had him up in the air, and he came down with at least 2, if not 3 hits on girl, and poof, there she went, which made things mucho easier.
Yeah, And one thing I do want to note is that Javinator is actually catching up to Jones in this fight. He was much, much faster on Tier 1. He's already on Tier 2. I feel like he's getting through Tier 2 pretty quickly as well, so this might actually be even closer than it first seemed.
Right, yeah. It's exciting. I love this.
Well, Jones is in that meteor range right now, so he's got to be a bit careful because that can take you down in a hurry if you end up not dealing enough damage during this to just get this fight over with as quickly as possible. And there's the calmness.
And it misses Gal, and so he brings his full power party up to face final Kefka, so that's got to feel good.
Oh, Javinator using Bahamut that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, there you go.
And Entity onto Tier 2 now as well. And one thing I want to say too is I don't think anyone's going to have trouble with the last tier of Kefka here tonight, unless you just get really, really unlucky.
No, I don't think so.
This is a race to get through the lower tiers between Mr. Entity and Javinator right now. And as long as you don't get that little bit of unluckiness on Jones' side, he should have this.
Yeah. I will say on my own end, when I got to the end of Tier 3, I had Edgar already in the air. And so at the moment, right at the beginning of the fight, he came down and I think took about 30 or so thousand HP off. Then I had Gal hit with the sword tag, and I felt really good because I was actually able to finish off Kefka before he could even get Fallen One going. So that was I felt really good about that. And I expect these runners are probably going to be able to push through with similar speed.
Yeah, always good when you see that Fallen One skip. Unfortunately, we didn't see it on Jones's end. He is using that Starlet to heal, still just keeping that damage rolling. It's just a matter of, keep that pace steady. But yeah. Javinator already almost has Girl down on Tier 3, and will be sailing forward from there. Entity's still working on Tier 2, but that definitely has been a very good job catching back up from Javinator here.
Sorry, I can't think of anything to say. I'm just so busy watching all this unfold.
Just sometimes that tension is enough on its own.
Oh, absolutely.
And it is kind of just a steady way home for Jones. It's really just, I feel, almost a matter of how fast will he get. Yep, does get the Goner skip. GG to WR Jones, our first place on stream finisher tonight. I don't have his time handy because I am not in the race room because I got here at the last minute.
Well, good news is I have it. He finished with a time of 1 hour, 46 minutes, 2 seconds. So GG to Jones, and it is now on screen as well.
Yep, meanwhile, Jab's having a bit of a rough time. He had his Cyan fall. He's trying to get sort of caught back up as Entity has hit that third phase as well. So a little bit of a rough spot, but there's calmness, so he should be through to the end with Phantom, giving him all the protection he needs. Let's get on to the final tier for him as well.
All right, so we've got Javinator on stream on the final phase. We have Entity on stream wrapping up phase 3. Unfortunately, that stream lag I think has been sort of putting Entity behind on screen, and you see the time up there. Actually, Entity did finish in second with a time of 1 hour 46:25, but that lag makes it look like he's behind Javinator, but he has in fact already finished. So he was 23 seconds behind Jones.
Which also shows that he is lagged for over 2 minutes of time, unfortunately, tonight.
Yeah, that's got to be rough. Sorry, Entity, but GG's, absolutely.
Let's focus for a moment here on Javinator's fight, which is over. Never mind. Or we cannot focus on it.
All right, so I'm sitting there chatting in the room, see if anybody wants to come in and do some interviews.
Still Javinator third place on stream with a time of 1:47:48. So these top 3 runners have only been separated by 1 minute and 46 seconds.
And it looks like in the race room they're separated by about 2 or 3 U's in the word sure. So they're distinguishing themselves in very narrow ways yet again.
Yep.
All right, so hang on a second. Let's see if I can pull Javinator into the room here. I can. All right, let's see. Can I? Yes. There we go. All right, sorry, I'm having to work with pulling people into rooms a little bit. We are now joined in chat by Javinator. GG, Javinator.
Hey, thanks very much.
So, the seed giveth, and, well, with all the equipment and stuff, the seed just giveth. So, how did that feel?
I gotta say, that was a lot more generous than any practice seed I did, for sure.
Yeah, same here.
I couldn't believe it when I started with a character that had Sword Tech and Cyan in the party right away. I was like, oh, this is great. And then everything else just kept falling into place. It was great. I think I only had a reset on Guardian because I took that fight a little bit early, and I dragged out the Poltergeist fight a little bit. You know what? I thought about it afterwards. I should have just leveled up or taken it a little bit later, and I could have had Stunner on my Sword Tech Gao, and I could have stopped Poltergeist, and that could have gone a lot faster. But overall, that felt really good.
Now, one thing we noticed about your route through the seed compared to everyone else is you did a lot more of those free checks early on, whereas everyone else sort of went to ones where they would fight, where they would get a bit more XP early on. Would you like to explain your thought process there?
Yeah, so my strategy, right or wrong, was because it's basically I wanted to get as much stuff and maybe as many characters as possible first, because you don't start with everybody leveled up together. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because if you do that, then you're more likely to level up without the Esper bonuses, but at the same time it's a lot easier to take fights with 4. So anyway, that's why my strategy was basically go around, try and pick up all the free checks I can, hopefully get as many characters and stuff as I can, and then I would just grind after that. I knew I had Serpent's Trench available, which is good grinding, and there are no bosses, and I had Warp Stones, so I knew I was good to get a few fights there. Worst case, I could run away from them and grind later. But that was pretty much the strategy.
Yeah, it looked like that strategy worked out pretty well to begin with, and then I think we noticed a little bit later in the seed that you were starting to kind of trip on a few of the fights a smidge, as I don't know if it was necessarily maybe the levels in progress catching up, or was it just bad scripting on some of the bosses. It was a little tough to say, trying to follow everybody, but it definitely caught our attention early on, certainly.
Yeah, like I said, I think that Poltergeist fight, I think I probably should have just reset that right away, and then leveled up like one more fight, and then taken it with Stunner. But yeah, that was something I found in the practice seeds too. Basically, is it made the initial fights a little bit harder. But overall, anyway, it seemed to work out fairly well. I can't believe these other two jokers beat me by like a minute, but it felt pretty good.
Yeah, well, what we were seeing on stream was Jones kind of held most of the advantage throughout and made it a close race at the end. You came in pretty hard charging behind him, and then Entity went from being a little bit behind y'all to suddenly he found his nitrous somewhere because it just suddenly zoom off he went. And so it ended up being a really, really good Kefka's Tower because, I mean, as you saw, the three out of the 4 runners finished within the space of about a minute and a half. So it made for some fantastic viewing at the end. So definitely thank you very much for restreaming and for giving us such a great show.
I'm glad I could contribute. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Do you have any other questions, Ian?
None that I can think of. Thank you very much for a very good show tonight.
All right, thanks a lot, and have a good night, everybody, and thanks for the restream, and thanks everybody for the tournament. It's been awesome so far. Cheers.
Yeah, GG. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, so that was Javinator, and I'm going to go ahead and pull Jones in. So let me go ahead and move things around here. All right, and we are joined in chat by our winner on stream, Mr. Jones. Congratulations.
Hey, thank you very much. What a ride.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so close, holy moly.
Yeah, it definitely made for some fantastic viewing. I was just talking with Javinator a moment ago. It was, I mean, of course, you see all the times on stream now, the top 3 finishing within a minute and a half of each other. It was very much definitely edge of your seat sort of viewing.
Man. I was on the edge of my seat too, and I couldn't even see anybody else.
Yeah. Well, so what did you think of the seed just in general?
Well, I thought that it was much more generous than any of my practice runs. I was really scared of this one after doing a few practices and having gotten some pretty bad rolls there. But I mean, finding experience egg right off the bat sort of sealed the deal right away with this one, I feel like. So yeah, but I mean, I felt like there was just good stuff everywhere, and then finding the Ragnaroks in South Figaro too, I mean, couldn't ask for anything better.
Yeah, that when you found that XP egg, I kind of lost it a little bit on stream because I don't think I grabbed that for myself. And I was just sitting there, you know, obviously I couldn't literally pound my head into anything hard, but I really, really wanted to at that point.
Well, that's the thing, you know, the good thing's always in the chest you didn't check, huh?
Of course, yeah, obviously. Then you go into race notes and everybody else is like, oh, I found it! Like, really? Now?
Yeah, it's just the way it goes.
Yeah.
Now,
Well-
one thing that stood out to me personally was you had a pretty sizable lead going into Kefka's Tower, and obviously you still clinched it out on the stream, but you did run into a bit of trouble on the Goddess fights and the Air Force fights. What went through your mind at that point, and you know, what was your thought process for how you got around those in the end?
Well, with Goddess, I knew that Kyan would be alright because he had the Thunder Shield, but then when I used Shock and it only took off 2,000, I'm like, this is going to take forever. So my original thought was that I would give him double fixed dice because I had that, and then it turns out he couldn't equip it, so that kind of stunk. And then the same sort of thing happened with Air Force. I thought, really, I'm going to lose this to freaking Air Force? So I reset out of the first one and thought the same thing, like, I'll just put offering fixed dice on Terra, and she couldn't equip it either. And so I had a little bit of a mini existential crisis there for a second, but then I just figured I'm going to have to go for it because I don't know what else I'm going to do now. And then I thought there was actually a conversation in Discord about a week ago or maybe 2 weeks ago where we were talking about this seed with Umaro going up against Goddess, and I remembered that Cecil had said if you have the offering on, you bypass love token. So I said, you know, I'm just going to put offering on him and just swing away and just hope I can get through. And it worked.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I am in the process kind of trying to learn myself is what all can go through because whenever Goddess pops up on any seed that I'm running, I lose myself a little bit for a moment in sheer frustration and then start trying to figure out how to mitigate all that. So it was interesting and chat was mentioning that it sort of had that double-edged bit to it that yes, it went through Love Token, which was great. But it did, of course, with the offering also give up the flare proc. But considering you were going for just sheer, trying to get that damage in quickly to overwhelm Love Token and hopefully make it not a factor, then it worked out pretty well for you when you were able to take care of that.
Yeah, I just figured if I didn't have offering on and I was swinging normally, I would hit Love Token and then I wouldn't be able to use that anymore. And just felt like using Shock for 2,000 a hit would have taken like 5 minutes to kill her. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to go through that.
Right. I think I don't remember. I think I had to restructure my party and go back through KT to try to deal with Goddess and Air Force because I brought 5 party members, and so one of them had to go through solo, and neither of those fights were something that you really wanted to particularly try to solo at any point.
Yeah. And the thing with Air Force, too, is I was doing fine until he uses Launcher, and then suddenly you're at 40 hit points, and you're like, what am I going to do now? But
yeah,
I did not want to have to go out and restructure, so I'm just going to go for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why y'all are on Restream and getting really great times, and I'm still working on that part. So, I mean, of course, it's a learning experience for everybody. So, certainly, definitely appreciate the show that you put on. It was obviously the really close finish was fantastic viewing for all of us. So,
I'm sure.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on stream. Thanks for agreeing to Restream with us. Ince, did you have any questions as we get into Siberian's Kefka fight?
That was it for me. I think we also have an interview to do with Mr. Entity as well, too.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Entity's waiting in chat.
He's in the waiting room right below us.
Is he? Oh, Lord, that's why I didn't see him. He's in the one below me. I was looking on the ones above. Okay. Well, GG.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem. GG. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.
Alrighty, that was our first place finisher, Mr. Jones, and I'm going to go ahead and move Entity in here, and there you are. We are joined in chat by Mr. Entity. Mr. Entity, apologies for not seeing you in the room below me, so I was sitting there stammering as you were getting ready to come in, so GG's, and sorry for my brain being mush.
Yeah, no worries. I would have just jumped in at some point myself. I have the power.
Oh, that's true, yeah. I'm still not entirely used to having the Discord power, at least temporarily, to be able to move people around, so forgive me. But what did you think of that seed, all in all?
I think the Tritalk cost me beating Jones.
Yeah, fair.
That was a solid minute to 2 minutes of just, oh, I need one more hit. And everybody's frozen. I didn't like it.
Yeah, that double freeze felt real bad when we saw it on stream.
Yeah, and considering my luck with the flare procs up to that point, which was ridiculous, it's like a 1 in 8 chance or something of procking flare, and I was getting them every 1 or 2 hits. And then I get to the point where it matters, and no flare proc.
Yeah, it was unfortunate to see, but I will say one thing that really caught our attention on stream, and that was, I wouldn't say surprising, but it was still like a little bit of holy crap, was toward the end of the seed, you were sitting, I think Jones was in KT, or getting close to it, Javinator was as well, and you were sitting at, I think, 8 characters and 8 espers, whereas they were at around 11 to 12. And then suddenly we blink and you have 11 espers, and we're all just sitting around going, wait, how did that happen? So it just suddenly, you like pushed the gas pedal and suddenly you were just booming in for everybody.
Yeah, my last 3-4 checks were really fast. There was like an Ebbett's Rock that was kind of annoying, but still, as much as I hate it and as annoying as it was today, it's still one of the faster checks unless you get a major outlier in luck. Zozo takes like 2 minutes, Tunnel Armor takes like 30 seconds. Narsh got me an Esper essentially immediately. So yeah, didn't have any problem finishing it out on Espers.
Yeah, that was definitely something to see, and you were making up time very hastily, going through not just those Espers, but also I think you and Javinator both made up a good bit of time on Jones in Kefka's Tower. So it was
he 6 Ragnaroks? Because that was the trick.
fair. I
mean,
don't know
you get
exactly how many it was, but
2 Genji gloves and a place to buy Ragnaroks at the start of a season. You go, oh, this is gonna be fast.
Or you could be silly like me and think you won't ever have the money for any of that, not bother with it, and then lag behind. But
yeah, that's not gonna help you.
no, it isn't. But yeah, you did really well catching up and making it a very, very good race. Of course, you've seen that the difference was 23 seconds. So
yeah, I was annoyed at that.
Yeah.
Even just in South Figaro at the start of the game, trying to wait for that idiot to move out of the way on that little path down to the item shop, that was easily 20 seconds right there.
Yeah.
I hate that guy.
Oh, the NPCs I think are the worst facets of this game by far. They just love to kill your speedruns no matter what you do.
Yeah, they're huge chancellors. But the only other thing I really had to say about that was I was really disappointed that for once we had the undead flag on or off, depending on how you want to phrase it. Undead bosses were a thing. I didn't run into any. And it's usually a flag people overlook, so if I'm paying attention, I can buy myself like a solid minute on a boss fight by just revivifying them. There weren't any.
Well, you did have the other end of Super Senior Behemoth, I believe.
Yeah, but he died in one hit anyway.
Yeah, he took a few hits, but not very many. Yeah, it was a pretty quick go on that one. But yeah, there were no just straight out undead bosses that you found. Unfortunately, just that second half of the Behemoth.
Yeah, well, I mean, he only took like 2 attacks at most, and they were already queued up. So
yeah, it didn't lose you much time at all, really.
No. Yeah, but good job to everyone else. Top 3 out of the 4 of us within like a minute. That's pretty nuts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, Nth, did you have any questions? We're getting to the end of Siberian's Kefka fight, so we'll go ahead and narrate that.
You asked all the questions I had, so.
All right, well, GG's Mr. Entity, much obliged. Appreciate you coming on Restream tonight, and thank you for giving us such a great show. I hope you have a good rest of your evening.
All right, thanks to you guys, all the Restream teams, and as always to Atma, and in this case, particularly to Fowls, who has organized this event, and, deserves some thanks.
Alrighty. Well, that was Mr. Entity, our second place finisher on stream, and Siberian Bull has been making his way steadily through the Kefka fights so far and has now hit final Kefka, so we'll see how well he does. Looks like he
has, but he just had the worst possible thing that he could have had happen to him, which is that Gao that he had that was stacked, that was doing 8k a hit, got calmness going up to the final tier.
Yeah, that was unfortunate to see, definitely. So we'll see how he is able to get through it. He's still got shot going, which is doing a decent bit of damage. And he does have a jumper who's also doing a bit, but yeah, his DPS, unfortunately, is not matching quite what we saw from the other 3 runners, just like you said, by sheer unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah, and, that Edgar is not going to do all that much, too, because I'm not sure that Edgar is even really equipped that well, so losing that was pretty big. I mean, he's going to recover, he'll get through it, it'll really just slow him down, but that's just, you hate to see it.
Yeah, that absolutely. It looks like the Edgar that he has, I don't think has a Dragon Horn, because he's only doing 1 hit of damage per jump. So that makes it a little bit more painful. But the good news is, I think he's making up a good bit of that damage gap with your Ice 3s that you're seeing there. So pretty big magic damage. So that is definitely helping.
Yeah, and you know, even if he were to hit a rough patch, I feel like he definitely has that kind of team where you can just wait for these goner charging periods, do a lot of damage, sit back, turtle to the next one. It's a little bit slow, but it'll get him through it. So
Right.
really at this point, it's not a matter of, will he get through it? It's just how much is this going to throw at him in the meantime?
Right. All right, so that Goner unfortunately takes down Edgar, but Edgar had been a lower level character than the rest of the party, so that's understandable. But fortunately, the rest of the group is able to stand up to it pretty well, so they're able to keep putting out that damage for the most part. So yeah, it's just a matter of when Kefka goes down, and I think it'll probably be fairly soon.
Yeah, it's one of those rando gonna rando things there too, you can't control who's gonna get hit by calmness. You can't control that you find the one thing that would save you from it. I mean, he did have Phantom as well, so if you'd have timed that, possibly could have avoided it, but timing Phantom's always gonna be quite annoying.
Yeah. Good news is we see Siberian does push through and is finished up. So GG to Siberian, finishing with an official time of 2 hours, 8 minutes, 53 seconds. So GG to Siberian. I will check and see if he's willing to come in for an interview. So pardon me while I do a little bit of typing, and we'll see if we can... Oh, never mind. He is, looks like, already here. So I don't even have to type anything. Alrighty, so we are joined in chat by Siberian Bull. Congratulations, GG, Siberian.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, so just, I guess, lobbing the usual softball question at you to start with. What do you think of the seed overall?
It was fine. Probably went to Cyan's Dream too early, but it was a risk worth taking with that Sword Tech gal.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you're definitely not the only one. I also made an early Cyan stream check, and I rather liked having a Sword Tech gal go burr for a little bit.
Yeah, and you were also the second one on stream too, because Jones also went for that early dream, so it was reasonably like 50-50 spot on it.
Yeah, but we also had the early XP egg, so that kind of balanced it out.
Right. Well, I was going to say, the way that I started the conversation with some of the other runners was the seed giveth and the seed basically giveth. What did you think about all those items that you were able to find, like Ragnarok's, and you mentioned the EXP egg?
Yeah, before the race, we were talking. I think some of us were talking about how this scene might be a bit rough and might not be giving, and all it did was give, give, give.
Yeah, exactly.
I probably should have went to the auction house instead of paying the guy in Zen, and then blowing my money on Thunder Shields afterwards. Hopefully to get at least maybe two of my last Magicite pieces.
Well, I think we saw I think it was Jones that went into the auction house, I believe. And I don't remember how long it took him to finally get that Esper, but he ended up going through several sales, picking up the side items to try to get those out of the pool.
That
But
ended up being a 5-try auction house for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't know if anyone found safeties, but I had a feeling I was going to lose one of my guys before Kefka too. That's why I threw the EXP egg on Edgar there at the end, because I hadn't been using anyone but the first 4 I found.
Yeah, we did have Jones again actually found Fenrir at the Kefka at Nurse Check and was the only one who went there to find it.
Interesting.
It felt bad seeing your gal go down at that last second, getting hit by that calmness.
He was going full powerhouse at the end there with all the experience and then the hero ring, and like, can we just do more damage? And like, it's gonna happen. I'm gonna lose him before I even see Kefka at the end.
Well, you did well to compensate for it because, like you said, he was sort of your big damage dealer, but it looked like you compensated mostly by trying to do what you could with a suddenly hello, I get to fight now, Edgar, and throwing out magic with Terra and Celis, of course, who have the high magic to help with that damage. So you were able to improvise pretty well. So definitely congrats on that.
Yeah. But it is what it is. Overall, I'm happy with how it ran. Like, but all three of them died dunning at the same time while I'm here. I was like, don't mind me. I'll just pull up the rear here.
Hey, that's my job. I mean, you might have been the last one to finish on stream, but don't worry, I'm comfortably an hour behind you. So, hey, you're well into the forefront of the group. So definitely congrats on that.
What else? What else happened? Let's see. Trying to sit here and see what other curveballs it threw. Oh, yeah, I was trying to do as many of the check because let's see, when was it? I started doing some of the checks that involved actual enemies in the way because I finally decided, all right, because usually I start off my steeds with in South Figaro trying to get maybe up to level 10 in the basement before throwing on the Moogle charm. That's always something I've been doing. I've been doing that all the time. So if you see me do that, that's what's going on. But it got to the point where I really wanted to have the extra damage before going back into for Gal before going back into the dream, because I do like doing the longer checks where it's like 3 first, like the dream and like the Magic Tech facility. So I pretty much started going through these spots mid game, like the Upper House and the Railcar and the Elite River, hoping to get a few more levels. But Elite River, that was a bit of a surprise. Ugh. I was not happy with that.
Yeah, we saw you doing that. That felt pretty bad because you were getting sort of the wrong end of the business on that one.
Yeah, but fortunately by that point, there was a warp on one of the Espers, and Celis had learned. They're like, all right, free warp, we can escape from everything. Goodbye, not dealing with this.
Yeah, fair. All right, well, Nth, did you have any other questions before we send everybody home for the evening?
That was it for me. Thank you very much for a very good race.
Hey, you're welcome. Hope to do this again sometime.
Yeah, the GG Siberian Bull. Congratulations, and have a good rest of your night.
All right.
All right, well, that wraps it up for everybody on stream tonight here. Thank you all for joining us here on FF6 Worlds Collide. It was a great race with a fantastic finish, so we appreciate that you all could share it with us. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Thursday evening. I want to give a quick shout out, of course, to everybody here on the Restream team, myself and Nth as co-coms. We had Ceiling Cat doing the tracking and Asherin doing the restreaming, keeping our heads on straight and keeping everybody entertained tonight. So definitely shout outs and much love to everybody who was able to help us out tonight. And we have our next race is the Saturday night race at 7 p.m. Eastern on Randomania. So please be sure to tune in then. I will not be able to because I'll be working. Hooray. But you guys have a great time. And Nth, do you want to go ahead and see us out tonight?
Sure do. Again, thanks to all the runners, thanks to everyone on the Restream team, and especially thanks to everyone who showed up to watch. And we will catch you all on Saturday night. Have a good night, everyone.